Welcome everybody to Tea Time with Jesse. I'm here today with my good friend Chris Annis-Lee.
It's me, Chris.
Chris has been a good friend of mine for a long time. We were in our high school improv troupe together.
A long time ago.
Yeah. And Chris has come to China, visited me, actually visited the tea market, which is where we got this first tea that we're going to be making today.
Yeah.
And today I'm really excited to talk to Chris about lighting and lighting design, because that's what you do with the lights. Chris's house is full of all these amazing, interesting lighting stuff.
And it's market research for tax purposes.
Exactly. This is market research, people. And Chris, actually, you did the lights in my apartment. So
I did.
Anybody who saw my apartment, any of my videos, that's you. And more importantly, you do like actual like plays, productions.
Don't even suggest that your entire life is not a grand charade. But
I would never.
Only in
I would never.
The strictest monetary sense.
Oh yes. You're like your life is a play in the sense that I can charge you to do stuff.
Precisely. And my life is a play in that it's just a constant comedy of errors.
There we go.
So
that's perfect.
Metaphorical, literal, here we are meeting in the middle over some tea.
Oh, that's going to be great.
Yeah.
And you've also worked on some major productions. Didn't you do the lights for Hamilton in Britain?
I did not. None of that is true.
None of that is true, people. No. That's not true.
I was an intern in 2016 on the lights for Hamilton, specifically not the production originally in the Richard Rodgers, but I was an intern to Hal Binkley, who was a phenomenal lighting designer, rest in peace, died a few years ago, and his associate Ryan O'Gara. And over the course of that internship, they were also working on Hamilton, so I was kind of involved in the background of some of that, and specifically I guess designed might be a strong word, but I created the templates that are used for the ring sequences that go around, the lighting that is keyed to go all around the double turntable that Beowulf Boritt. No, it wasn't Beowulf Boritt. I actually don't remember the scenic designer for Hamilton. That's actually bad.
Wow.
Oof.
So you wrote Hamilton.
Yeah, I wrote it. I wrote it. Basically what I'm saying is that I am Lin-Manuel Miranda's ghostwriter for the entire thing.
Don't quote us on that.
Yeah, that's not true.
That's not true.
Yeah.
But
I have a very vague involvement with a very famous production.
That is true.
It's the only thing of note I've really ever accomplished to this day.
I love Chris's stuff, and we'll be showing videos of Chris's lighting work. But in the meantime, let's get started with some tea.
Sure.
This is Gongmei white tea ball that came from that shelf over there.
That's off camera.
That is off camera.
It could be there, it could not be there.
But more directly or more obtusely came from the Beijing tea market when you visited me. In what year was that?
Orthogonally. So I've traveled through China twice, I think. The first was on a dance tour with a company called Shenwei Dance. And I don't think I caught up to you. And the second time, this is my dog, Garnet, and she thinks that anything is a treat.
Yeah, Garnet thinks the T-ball is a treat.
The
T-ball is not a treat. I'm going to show it to you guys up here then, because if I put it to this camera, she's going to eat it.
She'll be extremely disappointed, I think.
Yep.
And then the second time was maybe 2018, I think, when I wasn't there for work, so I was able to just swing up and say hi and hang out in Beijing with you. And you gave me a lot of recommendations for where to go in Beijing and in Shanghai.
Yep. And that was and then we went to the tea market together, which is where you got this. This is actually from the same guy that I get my white tea balls from. So if you go on the site and you get the Gongmei white tea ball, if you get the Gongmei white tea ball, this is the one that that you'll be getting. Although yours are aged a couple extra years because you brought them back by hand.
I did individually, piece by piece.
Yeah. So for the tea balls, for people who are making tea balls, it takes a little while for them to open. So this first wash steep, which if you have a loose leaf tea, I would wash it for like 5-10 seconds or something like that just to get it open. This needs a little bit more time, so we're going to give it a little bit more time to get open.
I don't see any tea pets currently on this table.
Oh, there should have been tea pets. We have an actual pet.
That's true. And I don't think she would like having
you want me to run and get
boiling
tea
hot
pets?
tea poured upon there. Well, if you want, they're just on there.
Yeah, I'll get yours. Gotta have the tea pets.
Yeah. We're just going to narrate what Jesse's doing. He's picking up two little piggies, three-legged piggies that my mother picked up for me from a place in Cambridge a long time ago.
There we go.
That's Porky and Bess.
Porky and Bess, thank you. So we'll have Porky and Bess on the tea table today. Very cool. So what was your impression of the tea market when you went there?
Everything in China that I have been to has this kind of amazing wholesale quality. You want me to lift that up for you?
We got it.
All right. And it's for a Westerner, it can be absolutely overwhelming walking through all of the different shops and knowing that every one of those shops represents, someone's entire life's work.
Basically. Yeah.
Garnet, would you like a treat?
We're gonna throw a treat to the dog.
You can have one, but you have to sit.
Oh, good job.
You're doing good for me in front of the internet.
Good job.
Thanks, buddy.
Very important internet moment.
Yeah.
Well, so yeah, because for people who don't know, the Beijing tea market is like 3 kilometers long, and there's shops on both sides of the road, and there's like huge markets that are just like buildings with like 300 shops in them.
And when we say shops, we specifically mean like 10-foot square.
Yeah.
Like the size of Bushwick bedrooms.
Yeah.
Is what we're going for.
There's
here.
small ones, and then some of them, and some of the bigger, fancier ones, like it's like the whole floor is one shop.
Yeah.
And then some of them, it's like literally just some person with all their tea in a room.
Indeed.
And then, kind of waiting until it goes out there.
Right.
So.
In one of those shops where I got my own tea table.
Yeah.
Throw to B-roll.
Yeah, B-roll.
Yeah.
When you got the tea table.
Yeah. Do you like it when the interviewer just takes control of the
I like that. I like that. I like being dominated.
Yeah.
Continue. What?
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah,
what? What? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So you went. So when you at the place that you got your tea table.
Well, it was fantastic. It was like rows upon rows of all these tea tables, and you very kindly guided me to it. And I mean, I swear to God, when you have someone there who speaks fluent Mandarin,
it makes it easier.
You get a better deal.
You do get a better deal.
This
is kind of the thing. Like sometimes people are like, "Oh, like well." I keep saying like we cut out the middleman, and then some people are like, "Oh, but now you're the middleman." I'm like, I guarantee you, I got you a better price than you would have done even if you were in Beijing.
You cut out
at the store
2 to 5 middlemen.
Yeah, there's a lot.
More the idea. There's Western middlemen. There's Eastern middlemen.
Yeah.
There's a middle woman somewhere in there.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah, but she's very shy. And then
so there's a little bit of everybody. So, but how was the experience of being at the tea market though? Was it what was your overall feeling of spending a day there?
It smelled astoundingly good.
Oh, it smelled.
That was the main thing. And because you're not traditionally a non-caffeinated tea person, which I know is something you're working on for the shop.
Yeah.
And I am very much a like flower tea kind of guy. So you took me over. You were like, I never go here to this side of the market.
Oh yeah.
But
it was good.
But I got this massive bag of chrysanthemum.
Yeah.
I was basically the backbone every time I was sick for the next because that would have been 6 years ago now.
Yeah.
And it's basically been.
It's basically
It's now sadly almost all gone. In traditional fashion, I got it down to less than enough to have a functioning cup of tea,
and
I refuse to throw that away.
People, I totally do this too. Like once I get down to like close to the end of the tea, I never finish it. It just stays there, and I have like a collection of mostly finished bags.
Right, of tea dust.
Tea dust.
Right.
So, I'll send you some when I get it in. We're going to be launching a chrysanthemum goji berry, our first non tea leaf tea or like herbal and flower tea. So that's going to be coming out soon. I'll send you some.
And I will pay full price for that.
Good. Full price. These people pay full price. You'll get a free one for being on the podcast.
Oh shit! Yeah.
Every episode you get like
anyone who wants to come on the podcast can get it for free. So
cheers. Here you go. Punk. Very nice.
What did you say? Did you just call me a punk?
Yeah, I said punk. Punk is like the onomatopoeia of like clack or whatever.
Oh,
it's not even a tea thing. It's just me as a comedian. I'm like clack.
Right. I always enjoy all of the different variations. When I was fresh out of school, I stayed in D.C. That's where I first went out of school on a fellowship with a place called the Kennedy Center, and I was staying almost exclusively with. Members of the Swedish embassy, like the bureaucrats, who would always like they drank like fish, and they would always say skål, skål, while making direct eye contact.
Skål.
Yeah,
I've heard of this. If you don't make direct eye contact, you're going to have bad sex.
Right.
That's what I've heard.
Which doesn't make a lot of sense because if you have more than 2 people drinking, how do you, unless you have a wandering eye?
Yeah.
How do you make that work? And if it's just two people drinking and you make direct eye contact, I guess it's likely that you will have good sex.
Yeah, so
with each other.
I mean,
because
I
of all
would
the good eye contact.
I would trust the Swedish embassy. So you mentioned, okay, so you moved to DC.
Yeah.
You let's get into how you got into lighting, because we met originally in the theater program at Newton North High School.
We met originally, Jesse.
Way back. We were
at a
this
little place called Space
Camp. That was way back.
Which is a very deceptive moniker.
Yeah, so like everybody's like, oh my God, you went to Space Camp? This is when it was in middle school. Space was like an acronym for something. It wasn't like astronaut stuff.
Some place, anywhere, kinda, with a C.
Kinda,
everywhere.
With a C.
I don't know.
The hard C.
The hard C.
So we basically met at essentially summer camp, and then later in when it came time for high school, you were 2 years behind me.
Yes, I am 2 years behind.
2 years behind me.
It's never stopped, by the way.
It's never stopped, and it's going to be like that forever, probably. And so we met each other actually doing theater, or didn't met each other, but we did theater together. We did improv theater, and you were also involved in the stage crew and in lighting the shows.
Very much so.
What got you into lighting? Like, what made you want to go backstage and make sure that people could get seen?
So were we in middle school together?
I don't think so.
Did you go to FA Day?
I did go to Day, but I would have been in 8th grade when you were in 6th, and at that time, I don't know if the 8th graders ever talked to the 6th graders.
We were very small by comparison.
Yes,
and you were really ripped back then. When I met you I met you when I was in elementary school.
Oh my God.
And you were in middle school, and I remember every day for lunch, all you would eat was a king-size Hershey bar. And then you would you would take the bottom of your shirt and wipe your mouth with it, revealing your 8th grade, I guess it must have been 6th or 7th grade at that point, rock hard abs that you did nothing for. Nothing at all.
This is not the direction I thought the interview would go, but
it always goes to the abs.
Those are gone. Yeah. I actually, for whatever reason,
I never earned them.
I never earned them. I did not earn them. I had a period in 9th grade where I did sit-ups and push-ups every day, and I got into a little bit better shape. But the truth is that I did not earn whatever I had, and now I've lost whatever I had at that time. But that's so weird. You remember the abs,
Jesse. I'm a bisexual.
Yeah, you're like, you saw the abs, and you're like, I remember the abs.
I live in this house with my boyfriend. But out of those abs blossomed a lifelong friendship, and that's really what matters.
There we go.
Hold my hand gently.
I want to hold your hand.
It's not weird. Okay,
gently.
all right,
let's do it.
Past
that.
But moving forward, and then into middle school, where our story of lighting begins.
Okay.
Which is, so you remember there was the newspaper.
Yeah.
And I know the first half of this conversation between you and I is just going to sound like a couple of assholes boasting about their public school education in Massachusetts.
Public school in Massachusetts is very nice.
In some places, yeah. I mean, we didn't grow up in Dorchester, but it's a horrifying thing.
The school
property
programs,
values are directly sent into the schools.
The Newton public schools, both of our middle school and high school public theater programs were great.
They were astoundingly good.
I remember when I went to China, and I would go and I would teach improv comedy sometimes at only the most very like.
Sit. Oh. Garnet. You're embarrassing me in front of the internet.
No,
all right, you can go over there.
Not sitting. Okay. I remember when I got to China, and I taught some improv comedy classes at like some very forward-thinking high schools. Like they had to be in order to teach improv in Chinese.
Right.
And even these very forward-looking, top-of-the-line high schools had no theater program.
Right.
None. Like so, and then I was like, oh, like it made me realize like how good our theater program was. I was like, how would you even build something like that?
Right. Which is not only to do with astounding amounts of white and class privilege that existed in our community, but also because of some really good teachers.
That's true.
Who were there.
Yeah.
But I was a part of the middle school newspaper, which again is just going to sound like we're spending the whole time bragging, but it's important context.
Yeah.
There's a thing called the Columbia Journalism Awards, which are for high schools.
Yeah.
And you can enter if you're a middle school, but why on earth would you? We won it 8 years in a row as a middle school.
Damn.
So I just put that in context.
This is when you got to do that thing
where you wave your hands back and forth.
I can't do it.
Well, we can add the sound in later. Here you.
Right.
See, they don't know.
Perfect.
On the audio.
So you won these awards.
Right. Anyway, so I was a reporter for this, and one of my beats was drama, was the theater program. And though Newton North, our high school, did not deign to participate in any of the regional competitions because we were too busy. You know? Sounds such a douche. The middle school did. And I was told by our drama teacher that the only way for me to get a spot on the bus to cover this regional competition, which was being held at a local high school, was to have a role of some kind. And so the thing that seemed like the easiest to onboard me with was the lighting console. So I was going to be the board operator.
Okay.
And I guess functionally at that point the designer, but basically that's like take some sliders up, do sort of thing. And so we get there, and I sit down at the console before everything starts. And this is a board that I was completely unfamiliar with because I had no experience in technical theater. But what that I now know is an ETC Express 2448, a console built off of MS-DOS, which ran off of floppy disks. For all the youngins out there.
C:/
That's the save icon in your Word document, kids.
That's where it comes from.
Yeah. And that's what we still use to launch nuclear missiles.
No. Oh my God.
You don't know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're all still run off of, they're not even the small ones, they're the large format floppy disks.
Oh no.
And they do that because it's impossible to hack.
Okay.
So
I feel better about this now.
There is a reason for it, but the only reason...
But it wasn't designed that way.
There is still a way to repair that kind of technology, is that it's the key to our nuclear arsenal.
Well, what do you know?
Yeah, anyway... So this story has taken a turn. So winding back from nuclear armament to my middle school theater experience.
Yes.
Classic road there. I traveled there. I sat down at this high school, and we were all middle school students, of course, and there were two high schoolers who were emceeing it, whose names I forget. I'm going to call them Brob and Tob.
Sure.
And they were sort of doing the emceeing and quizzing them, and in my kind of like nascent desire to impress them, I just started pressing buttons like you do. And I now know, and I haven't thought about it in 10 years, but I bet you I could give you the exact string of keys that I used, because in high school later, just not to spoil it, I became very familiar with this particular console. And I think it was soft key 2, numeral 3, numeral 5, and soft key 6, enter. And what that does is delete the entire show.
Oh, so you destroyed the entire show.
The entire show, which come to find out was not backed up on site. And so this is not just for our show. This was basically the rep show file for the entire thing. And I don't want to get into the nitty gritty, but basically if you have a soft patch, which is a digital way of telling the console what connects your dimmers to what channels you want. If that is destroyed, there's just no way to turn anything on. So this was somewhat stressful for a young Chris.
Yeah, what happened?
Bottom line is eventually there was a floppy disk somewhere, and the stage crew teen who programmed it came in with the floppy and turned in, but the whole thing was delayed by like a half hour.
Oh.
And I as a nascent, manic depressive,
yeah,
way before treatment,
you're like, ooh, that was a good time for you.
I was having a hard day, and to her credit, Miss Schulman, who is now Miss, that was long after I left. People can get married after I don't know them, and I'm not required to memorize their new names. But Miss Schulman at the time saw that I was not having a good time, and in a stroke of genius came up to me and said, "Here is how you make this up to me. You get to high school," because I was in 8th grade at that point, and you find the stage crew, and you design the lighting for a show.
Wow.
And I was like,
big brain move. That was a good
very
teaching
smart.
Move. Very cool.
Smart. And like in the way that you look back and you decide that individual moments are turning points and they make for good stories. This is something like that. I'm sure it would have happened anyway. But for the purposes of this story,
well, it did happen.
It's the only reason why I went to the stage crew, because I mean, hell, if that hadn't happened, I could be sitting here as an actor. Can you even imagine?
Oh God, it would be
devastating.
There wouldn't be these lights
to
behind
me
us.
It would just be filled with an equal number of plays, but no way to read them.
Yeah. Wow.
It'd be hard. At night.
It'd be hard.
During the day, there would still be, but it doesn't matter. So I get to high school, and I kind of stride in confidently, big boy 9th grader saying, I am gonna design a play, and all of the stage crew kids like all dressed in their black trench coats, wielding their butterfly knives, are like, sit down.
Here's your butterfly knife, sit down.
Oh, exactly. Well, they're all over there. I still have them from high school.
Well,
we'll have the tea section, we'll have the butterfly knife section, the training the dog section. I'll show you all my lamps. Hey ho.
Between that, the show will be 8 hours, so it'll be fantastic.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's good.
I'm sure everybody loves that.
That's good content, man.
Podcast
uncut.
Content.
That's the content America wants.
So you got in, and what's the process of designing a show? So when do the directors of a show come to the lighting designer?
Right.
And then how do you come up with the idea of how you're going to light a theater show?
Right. So this gets me into somewhat controversial political points about the way the theater is done in America.
Okay.
Which, as is the way we do everything else, is heavily commercialized and with almost no government support. I mean, there is government support. There's funding. There's the NEA. There's there's also the DCA grants, which are space and equipment grants. But the bottom line is that compared to anywhere else on the planet that has a thriving theater scene, there is no real support. And so that means that everything is done in this kind of cutthroat way. I was saying to you yesterday that theater, in my opinion, is more hierarchical than the military. And that is, in the US at least, and that is something that comes straight out of this sort of cutthroat corporate way of doing things. And I say all of that because I'm inside of it and I see it. If someone from the outside would be like, look at this bunch of cuddling nerds. And that is true comparatively. I'm not suggesting that we're all going to military boot camp here. That's not it at all. But the structure, the actual organizational, like the org chart.
The power dynamic.
Right. You've got the producers with the money. Sometimes they're also the general managers. They hire a production manager. Both of them collectively hire a director. The director has ultimate authority over everything unless someone with money disagrees, because isn't that always how it is? And then from there, in the US, generally, obviously there's a playwright that comes first. And this is just for theater, dance, and opera. They all exist in a slightly different wavelengths. But if we're just talking for theater, then the first designer that is brought on is the scenic designer. And the scenic designer is generally the person who helps define the blocking, because what is scenery except determining where people stand when? And like creating obstacles for people. And kind of like an essential aspect of theater is that limitations are very good, because if you can just do anything, then
it's just like it's such a mess.
Right.
You have to know what you're not doing.
Right. And this is a problem that people run into with dance, where there is less of this kind of top-down limitation, because oftentimes you're not starting with a script or anything. It's just kind of freeform. And so a lot of what I do in dance is come in and impose boundaries, which sometimes choreographers like, and sometimes they don't. I might come in and say, okay, this is your concept.
There you go.
Skål.
Eye
contact. So the first person that gets hired is the scenic designer. And then usually after that is the costumes designer, because you've got a pretty scenic model and you want to see what's inside of it. And then the lighting designer, and then the poor sound designer always comes last. Except for the poor props designer, who is not in many theater situations even considered a designer. They're considered entirely subservient to the scenic designer. So they're often called the props master, which is lower than designer. Because, theater.
Sure.
It all just comes from the Dutch getting off their ships in New Amsterdam. That's why you don't whistle on a stage.
Is that true?
Yeah, because that was a superstition coming off of Dutch sailing. And when these people got to New Amsterdam, what is now Manhattan, they all got off, and like the rigging for like original hemp houses and things like that is identical to the rigging that you would find on ships. And that's to this day why I don't know anything about sailing, but I can tie all of the sailing knots. That, right, to the point where a clove hitch is called the electrician's knot, but like where did it come from, But
so why can't you whistle though? That was bad luck on a ship.
Yeah,
so it's bad luck on a ship.
I mean, I don't know why it was bad luck on a ship, but it's for exactly the same reason.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly.
So okay. So in general, then the lighting designer is going to come on pretty late in the process, and so if anybody's worked on any creative project, you don't like coming in late in the process, because
a lot's done for you.
A lot's done for you, and you don't have as many creative decisions you can make.
Right. Beverly Emmons, who is a really wonderful lighting designer, who is, I assume she is still working. She is getting older, but is like one of the kind of like it's interesting because lighting in the United States was very much a profession founded by women, and then as soon as it became financially viable, the men took it over. So you have this entire conversation will be nothing but tangents upon tangents. I'll get back to what you originally asked me in 45 minutes. But, and you can tell as I'm drinking more tea, I'm speeding up.
Yeah, that's good.
Have you explained tea drunk to your audience?
Yeah, so, well, you can't be tea drunk now. You've only had a couple sips.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm a coffee drinker normally, man.
I don't know. But the tea drunkenness is the state of heightened energy and alertness from drinking too much tea. Yeah. But you can't get there with one thing of tea like this.
Indeed.
It'll take a little while.
My suspicion is that I'm going to have to take some melatonin to get to sleep, even though we're doing this before noon.
Wow.
It's a powerful thing.
Powerful thing.
Once
a chrysanthemum goji berry tea comes out, I'll get you that. That's going to be really good. It's really good. Man. But okay, so you're so the men stole the jobs.
Right. So like you start with, I mean, so like the first real place that was teaching lighting design was Yale, and it was being taught by a guy named Stanley McCandless, who in 1938 wrote a book called A Method for Lighting the Stage, notably A and not the.
That's very very humble of him.
Yeah, I have it somewhere up here.
Yeah, but he was like, even though it was the first one, it's just a method.
Right. It has since largely become the method for reasons that I will explain in a moment, and the kind of basic concept of it are lighting areas, which is basically if you want to have a lot of coverage, which is a film term, but what I mean is like if you want to cover your ass, then you want to have like a backlight and a high side from each direction and a front light and maybe a downlight on however many areas of the stage you have enough lights to provide that for. So usually you want basically a 10-foot circle.
Okay.
And each 10-foot circle overlaps by 50% with the next. And you want as many rows of that as you can cram in. And then you can do isolation because, like, another tangent, there are no editors in live theater, and there are no lighting designers in film. If it's a pre-filmed thing. Why is that? It's because we do the same job. Lighting design, in addition to all of the other roles it plays, is basically the film editor position because we direct focus and control how time.
So if the light is on stage left, everybody's looking stage left. If the scene changes and the lights come on stage right, you've effectively cut the scene, cut to the next area.
In school, there was a lovely kind of conceptual discussion about which is better, a show with one light cue that somehow does all of the jobs it needs to, or a show with 1,000 light cues where the audience cannot tell. And I still don't know. I don't think there is an answer of which is better. I have done both.
Well, how could you have a show with one light cue that does everything it needs to do if, I mean, you would basically be relying on the acting and the writing to direct the attention, not the lighting. Yeah.
Or blocking that is specific so that it is collaborative, basically. So what I've determined is the kind of underlying thing one is examining with this question, although it wasn't really discussed at the time, is what we're talking about, is the difference between the kind of American capitalist theater, see I'm bringing it back, and I hate to just say Europe, but you know,
Europe broadly,
a more European style of theater that is built around the stability that comes from government support of art. So like I got to DC.
So explain the difference. So what is it?
All right. I got to DC, and at the age of 22, I lit a production of Yerma. At a place called Gala Hispanic Theater. Sit. Good girl. A production by a group called La Joven Compañía, which is out of Madrid. Directed by Jose Luis Arellano, who is the head of that company. And he came with a understanding that he would be existing in the kind of system he's used to in Madrid, where you have money for every designer and all of the actors to be in a room for 2 months together, building a thing together.
And that doesn't happen here.
No! Not at all. They basically they got as much of that time out of me as I was willing to donate. And it was not a very profitable thing to do, but it was nice. That was like one of my first big awards was coming off of that show. And like it was a lot of fun recognition. And the reason why it looked so good was not specifically because of any quality that I have, except for a natural curiosity, maybe, and a willingness to collaborate, which are, the qualities I try to maintain as I grow more old and jaded over time. But it came out of the process of everyone being in a room together.
So having experienced that, the actual process of the making of the things together leads to different choices. Can you remember a choice that you made differently, maybe because you were in the room with all the people?
Yeah. So because they're Spaniards and they're weird,
yeah.
They liked to start by ripping off all of their clothes and running around the theater and just kind of vibing with it, man.
Is this true?
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's 100%. I'm not fucking with you. I didn't lie to the internet. No one's ever done that before.
So that's step one, take off your clothes and run around the theater.
It's a necessary part for art. I did not participate, nor did I take any documentation. And because I'm a gentleman.
Yeah. And we can chat GPT that. We can AI. Let's put in a request for a visual of Spaniards running around a theater naked while Chris watches.
I can even give you the names of the Spaniards. They're all on TV now.
Oh my God.
So they could pull that in pretty quick.
Well, we'll stop there in case we get into trouble. But so they're running around and you're looking at this and you say...
and so there's one of them, I think his name was Yvonne, who was playing the male lead of Yerma. The husband that Yerma eventually kills in a fit because he doesn't want to have kids, and all she wants is to have kids. Yerma is barren in Spanish, and this is a Lorca play.
Okay,
so it's a very old kind of classic. Lorca is it's not a direct comparison, but if you think of it as Spain and Shakespeare, that's about right.
Yeah.
What La Joven Compañía does is takes these kind of classic works and devises from them a kind of more modern and abstract sort of version. So Yvonne just kind of starts crawling towards the lead actress, naked on the ground. And the scenic designer and I, Silvia de Marta is a scenic designer from Spain. I think I was the only U.S. person involved in that production. Look at each other, and she is like, dirt, she says in Spanish to me. And I'm like, light. And then I run, and it sounds like we're all just stoned out of our minds, but I swear everyone is sober.
This man is crawling naked towards the
sober
actress.
As a clam.
Dirt.
Right.
Light.
And so it when you break it down, it sounds like such a simple decision I just grabbed a light and ran over to the far end of the stage that he was crawling towards and cut this very sharp light that was just on his chest and down, and anything that was dangling beneath his chest, which once we got the whole production finished was also leaving a distinct groove in the dirt as he crawled towards her. And he would get excited by this aspect of the performance. It was very meaningful in the moment. I'm making it sound incredibly crass, but it was quite powerful. And the light shot in between her legs through to him, and it was like it became this sort of initial tableau, this kind of metaphor for the relationship that they had throughout the play. And that could have only happened for everyone stripping naked and running around the theater. And it turned into this very powerful and interesting moment that informed a lot of the rest of the design.
Wow.
Because then everything came from low. Because a lot of, you have the option, you can come from any fucking angle in theater. And from that we realized, Juan is the character's name Juan? I'll sound so racist if it isn't.
Yeah, it better be.
It fucking better be.
It better be.
This character is a farmer. He's of the earth. And ironically, the play is Yerma is barren, but is specifically about this woman who cannot have kids but really wants to, and goes on all this whole journey to try to find them, including to a shaman on a mountaintop in a storm, and all kinds of classic old school imagery and stuff. And all of the man's lighting kind of comes from beneath him, and all the woman's lighting comes from above. And so having that kind of juxtaposition and being able to change the directionality of the light based on who has power in the scene and where the scene is going.
And that's such a subtle way of being able to show that. You don't need to have this domineering physicality to be able to show who's in charge of that scene.
Right.
If they have their lighting, the audience will have kind of subconsciously absorb that into their understanding of the character and the world.
And one of the reasons why I'm so grateful that I spent, because I've now done 28 productions at that theater over the last decade or so, and one of the reasons I'm so grateful for having done so much foreign language work, and in a I can make myself understood in Spanish, but I am not fluent. I'm barely conversational, and so I have to treat it like dance, because I can read the script, and if I see it on the page, I can parse out what they're saying. But in the moment, and especially, Spaniards talk so fast.
Well, this is actually an interesting thing. It's like there's obviously, I did comedy in a second language,
right? Which you understood,
which I understood. But there is also something I saw that was when occasionally you would find other foreigners or other non-Chinese people that would try to do like comedy in Chinese, and at the beginning, it's all going to be a mess, right? And so. But what was interesting was there was a weird sort of like engagingness in the struggle, because they were approaching it kind of in a completely different way.
Right.
And I wonder sort of like whether there is that, for comedy, it's kind of rough, because if they can't understand the words, a lot of comedy is not going to be funny if you can't really speak well.
Yeah.
But for lighting, do you feel like kind of not knowing everything and having to have that sort of like 200% focus on the scene just to be able to understand what was going on helped you figure out how to light it?
Yeah, absolutely. So specifically because you need to treat it like dance. You need to pay a lot of attention to their physicality, and it just so happens that these actors, and I think probably in general actors who are not trained in like the more standard American ways, have much greater attention to physicality. In the U.S., directors especially are obsessed with seeing actors' faces, because they believe that that is the only way that you can really understand the emotions they're going through. Whereas that was not even a discussion in there's light on stage. If they turn their face to the light, you will see their face. But you don't need that. They have so much energy in their body, so much physicality, and they have a kind of dancer's ability to utilize that all you need to do is you can put them in silhouette and you can know exactly what they're thinking. Which is not to say that American actors don't understand this, but a lot of the training programs that I've seen, and specifically what a lot of directors want, ignores the body in favor of all of your face holes.
Well, I mean, even in film, like, in film, it's really obvious. Like in film, they shoot up here the whole thing.
Sure.
There are very few filmmakers that'll go and show the whole body. And, obviously in a stage play, in drama, you have that benefit that the audience can see it all.
Right.
You can do much more with the body as an actor. It's kind of more free that way.
Well, yeah, because the audience can look where they want to.
Yeah.
Which
means you have a choice as an actor. If you have that ability and you want to express yourself that way, you can kind of draw in the attention to that spot.
As a designer for theater, and I have done work in film, and I've done a lot of work for television news and that sort of thing, where it's a much more kind of functional form of art you're doing, where information delivery is the goal. But you can still talk about it. Is like what you benefit from in theater is that everything is surrounded by context. You cannot put blinders on people. You can put blinders in people. You can blind them.
You can,
but and I do love to do that.
Yeah.
But it is there is always the context of the moment. And so that gets back to the question you asked me 20 minutes ago about American theater and how a designer comes into it, because unfortunately here, I brought up Beverly Emmons a while ago, and she has a phrase that I love, which is that lighting designers are tertiary artists in this country. You have the playwright, who is a primary artist. You have the director, who could either be considered a primary or a secondary, depending on how much control they have over the source material. A scenic designer is also kind of a secondary artist. That'll be my boyfriend getting that. Basically, a lighting designer is there in standard U.S. theater to paint over everyone else's decisions and to combine everything with this sort of glossy layer of light on top of it. You're there to knit all of the pieces together. I often refer to it as being the dramaturge of last resort. Basically, it's like you're there to say, okay, that wall is green and that whatchamacallit, and that costume is pink, and this lady is standing right in front of it, and it's not looking too good. So we're gonna take a little bit of this kind of cyan color, and that will even out the two colors because cyan is close to magenta, which is its complement, right? So that means that it will kind of soften it and even it out, whereas cyan is closer in the color spectrum to green, so it will lift it, and in this way we will equalize them if we want to flatten the person against the wall, or we can make the opposite choice by adding lavender. Yeah.
Very cool. So we're going to take a quick break right here and mix up a tea, but be right back. Thanks everybody for joining. More lighting design talk when we come back. Very good.
Skål.
Skål.
The internet is a dangerous place. A VPN can help protect you from that danger. What danger? Think of something. Now think of something you haven't even thought of. That could happen to you. The problem with most VPNs, though, is they taste way worse than tea. We interviewed one of our coders to find out why. Wait, you're asking why the VPN tastes worse than tea? What do you mean? It's software. It's not excuses. Of course, this could all be avoided by buying tea directly from Jesse's Tea House. Jesse gets his teas straight from small tea shops and tea farmers in China and puts them into his subscription service. Use the code JessePod for $10 off your first order of $30 or more.
All right, everybody. Welcome back. Tea Time with Jesse. I'm here with Chris Annesley, my good buddy, high school friend, space camp friend, lighting designer.
I remain here with all the same qualifiers.
We're going to do another tea and talk a little bit about lighting design theory, just how you go about thinking of the way you're going to light something, which I think is pretty interesting.
Yeah, usually from the side.
We're going to do the Tianjiajai Ancient Tree Sheng Pu'er. This is raw pu'er from Tianjiajai Mountain. This is the place I went in June when I went on my last trip back.
Oh, nice.
So this is from that mountain. Pressed into a cake.
Those photos were absolutely magical.
Yeah, really, really amazing stuff there.
And once again, the dog believes
the dog thinks it's a snack.
Her.
It's not a snack. I'm sorry, although she is looking at it real hard.
Oh yeah, she wants it.
But these, look at the leaves, man. Those leaves.
Wow.
Get them leaves.
And what's so delightful is because I've got the larger pu'er. I was out there.
The big bricks.
Yeah, the big boy bricks, and I see these, and my cute reflex is triggered. I'm like,
yeah.
Well,
so this is the advantage of actually knowing the tea farmers is like normally as a market product they press them into these big bricks because it's easier for everybody.
Right.
But if you know the farmers, you can be like, hey, I don't think Americans are going to buy 357 grams. Most people.
Right.
It would actually be better for them to get 4 of these of different teas, and they would like that more. And that's actually what we have in the Master Series box.
Nice.
So so we're gonna try some of this, and it's very kind of like, normally as a young raw pu'er tea, you're gonna have a little bit more like harshness in there. It's not necessarily bad, but it's going to be a little bit like sharper. Yeah. But for whatever reason, like the teas from her mountain are like they come out kind of smooth, almost as if they've aged a little bit. And that smoothness is very nice. I like it. So we're going to have that. No, this is not for you. The dog thinks it's for them.
He said, actively shaking it in front of her
nose.
I'm
sorry. This is not for you. That would be a confusing thing for a dog.
Yeah,
having stuff shaken in front of their face and been like, it's not for, because they don't know the words.
It's like someone waving a large wad of cash in front of me and saying, I am not paying you for your work.
Yeah,
I'm not paying you for your work.
Which sounds familiar.
Which really rolls right into the standard theater practice. If want to talk about that.
Oh, God. So, all right, continuing with the theater and the lighting design. So,
sure.
Let's say you have somebody that comes up to you and they're like, okay, we want to bring you on this project, you're tertiary, which they probably say to you and then slap you in the face immediately.
If they pay extra, yeah.
Yeah, and then, or you pay them.
Ooh.
But they come to you and they say, we want you on this project. Mm-hmm. What are the ways in which that you're going to try to help work with the team to bring out the director's vision through light?
Right. So again, it totally depends on whether this is the kind of bummer process that I have described to you that most lighting designers working in theater in this country find themselves in.
Maybe pick like an actual show you were on as an example. Like,
Sure.
Pick a show and maybe bring us through how you did that one.
Right. Well, we can do both. We can do one of these sort of more standard. If you go see a show at your local neighborhood theater.
Here's the smell of this guy. Isn't that nice?
And we can do a show with a kind of more ideal process, because I'm lucky enough now that most of the shows I do these days are more in the style of what we were talking about before, of actually being in the room together from the very beginning.
So let's start with the sort of the cheapo budget. Nobody has any money to pay anybody. How do you pull it off?
Sure. I mean, this process of tertiary, of like putting people in these lanes and not letting proper communication happen, unfortunately occurs all the way up to super high budget levels. But I'm trying to think of one in particular that is an example of it. I am so fortunate that I haven't had to do it in a long time. And I also don't want to call anybody out.
Well, maybe just earlier in your career or something like that.
Sure. So there was like a production of The Full Monty at a theater in Maine many years ago. And that was actually one of the first shows I did where I really felt like my lighting contributed to the process. Do you know the Ira Glass quote about this?
Yeah, your taste is better than your skill.
Right.
So for people that don't know it, what did Ira say?
Yeah. I hate to be a guy who carries around quotes in his back pocket, but here's one. He said essentially that the great tragedy of being an artist is that people get into it because they have good taste. And they have the good taste for a really long time to know that the art that they are producing does not live up to the art that got them excited about their profession in the beginning. Yeah. And that's when a lot of people give up. And so he was basically saying that you need to persevere through this period that will happen to everyone, where the art you produce is just not very good. And it's funny, I was talking with a friend recently about how wonderful it is that there is so much more artistic expression out in the world, but that doesn't mean there's more good art. In fact, it means there's a lot more bad art.
Well, that's the thing is, like, in my view, like the social mediaification of everything, and I love social media, I'm on social media, but it's like, the way you win is by making 60 seconds a day.
Right.
You don't make an hour over 2 months.
Right.
Because no one will watch your hour. People will watch 60 seconds a day. So that changes a lot of the artistic decisions, and it means that even though I would have loved to do long form, talking to friends, having tea, this stuff way earlier in the process, it was very apparent I needed to make hundreds of social media videos before I could even try to do this. And even then, like, this stuff is going to get buried underneath the social media stuff.
It's funny in the vague metaphorical sense how much our careers are parallel to each other, because it is. Oh, thank you.
By the way,
cheers.
Enjoy this. Sir. Really nice. Raw pour, lemony, sweet. Isn't that good? It's like back of the tea mountain instantly.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Oh, that's so good. There we go. I'm going to send you one of these afterwards for yourself.
Please.
This will be great.
Everybody's got to come on this podcast and get this free tea. Because...
so you think that my comedy career and your lighting career kind of parallel each other?
Well, in terms of the decisions we've made, is I have an architectural consulting company that does, that kind of gives me enough kind of spare capital to do these more interesting artistic projects.
Yeah.
And I work as a moving light programmer, which is one of the more highly paid things that a person can do in theater, because it's a very like technical kind of like skill.
Yeah.
And I do those things because I love them, but also because they enable me to then go and make these kinds of projects. And you're saying that what we're doing here right now, this kind of more long form stuff, is only possible because you put in the legwork and you have a subscriber base.
Yeah. And people actually would care to watch it, even if only a couple people. And that's one of the things I think that I definitely, because I didn't grow up in a family with like tons of artists where like it was like the realities of making creative work was known. I kind of assumed, like, you look at the successful artists and you're like, you assume that you make your money doing the stuff you love to do. And it's actually kind of the opposite. Yeah. It's very rare that you get paid well to do a project you really want to do that you're full firing on creatively. Yeah. Usually it's like, you get paid because you have a skill, and they need to squeeze some of that juice out of you, and you're useful. It's still juice, and it's not a bad thing to work collaboratively, but like the times when you make what you want, you have to hustle that together like fully, and really up to every level of success. The thing you want to do, you basically have to put together on your own, and it may lose you money. You know,
Usually at first.
Usually at first.
Yes, we don't all have Hamilton under our belts.
No, unfortunately.
I mean, although I did personally design it. So,
you did.
Yeah.
I heard that you wrote it.
Yeah, I wrote it, designed it.
I heard you were Hamilton.
I mean,
not acting it, like you are. Alexander Hamilton.
Exactly.
That's so great. We have Alexander. Okay, continue with that. Before I was trolling you.
None of that is true.
In the break, I was like, we got to stay on track.
I'm so sorry if there are any lighting designers involved in Hamilton who are like, that guy was fucking in the background.
No. So anyway, so you were on this show, Full Monty, Maine.
Yeah. And so I had spent, this was maybe like year 3 out of school or something, and I had spent a lot of time feeling really bad about the fact that the art I was doing was not actively improving the process vis-a-vis this Ira Glass quote we were just talking about. And then that was probably the first one that it sort of clicked. And so the process was basically like, I came in, like we were talking about in terms of tertiary art, the scenery was already designed. But fortunately, I had a scenic designer who had a sort of awareness of what light could do. The set, and we'll probably cut to some photos of it, was this really wonderful, giant, kind of old industrial windows hanging above the space with a cyclorama behind it. People that don't know what a cyc is, that's a big white curtain that you can project sky and colors on in the back, and it kind of usually defines the background of some more musical theater-y or dancey kind of shows. And then everything everywhere on the set had this beautiful texture to it because the Full Monty, the original movie that came out was set in, oh golly gee, was it Dublin? I'm not sure, but it was a former industrial center that had declined with the kind of fall of industry, and the American musical version was reset to be, I think, either in Detroit or Buffalo. I don't now remember. And is about a group of working class guys who realize they can make money stripping. And the sort of very fun kind of discomfort that some of them have with it, the great comfort that others have with it, and the kind of process of like there's like an almost heist movie element of putting the team together, which I really enjoy. And the songs are all very saucy and stuff like that. So it's a very fun one. And I realized that the way to do it was to be incredibly textural in everything that we did, including their bodies sometimes, because there is full nudity in the show. But also to kind of connect them viscerally to that environment. And for it to be this kind of smoggy, overcast world. This is what I mean when I'm talking about the lighting designer being the dramaturge of last resort. Is like, you know what a dramaturge is?
Explain.
This is the person that traditionally does kind of the literary review, does the historical context for the piece. If you have a play that is set somewhere real, which honestly most of them are, then you want to know about the world, and you want to know that your details
if the play is in
right.
the Civil War, you don't want people with cell phones and problems. But like that's like the very
unless you do
worst.
intentionally.
Unless you do
and
intentionally.
and in which case, great job. You're really maverick.
But
do you remember the Onion article? Brave director sets Shakespeare in his time and place.
It feels like that now. Like,
magnificent.
But basically just making sure like all those decisions would normally be made by the dramaturge, but you're saying it's kind of like the lighting designer is the last person who gets to go at that.
Right, exactly. And the dramaturge is not even a designer. This is a consultant, basically, that is brought on who has no decision-making power at all, but makes these recommendations that the rest of the designers can then kind of... It's unfortunately a role that I see less and less. Bringing me back to the fact that lighting designers are more often kind of the person who gets to do this, gets to / has to. And basically what that means is that you are there saying the scenic designers made these choices, the costume designers made these choices, the sound designer does not have a lot of bird song in the background of these, kind of post-industrial cities. There's gloom, there's grit, there's texture. And then we have hope of these performers finding a form of self-expression that is not necessarily societally approved, but that it directly challenges their masculinity, or in some cases enhances it, depending on their point of view. And that hope kind of brings out the light. But what kind of light is it? It's not sunlight, because they are not becoming rich. They're not ascending into Elysium or whatever. They are just some working class guys who have decided to form a go-go troupe for the weekend.
So that's not like ascending to heaven lighting.
No, it is the kind of marquee lighting. It is more traditional theatrical lighting, a harsh spotlight, a kind of warmth, the notion of having like rows and rows of footlights on the end of a stage, that sort of thing. If you're talking about color temperature, you're going from 5,000 Kelvin down to like 2,300 Kelvin or something like that. I don't know if this is in the shot, but this is 2,700 and this is 2223. And so you're going from this kind of moody overcast to something that is more subterranean. So it's actually interesting because it's sort of the opposite of the contextual lighting decisions that I was talking about in Yerma, where you have the male lead all of the light coming from below, and the female lead all the light coming from above. In this case, you have their kind of general background sense of working class oppression existing in this very diffuse kind of pinkish gray that surrounds them. And then you have this kind of sharp, bright, amber light that is defining them taking control of their own destinies in a very small, sexy way. So that's an example of a process that is kind of the more standard theatrical. And you can still have fun, and you can still make good art doing this. But a lot of the decisions were made in advance when I came in.
That makes sense. Can you give me an example of maybe a project that you put on yourself where you put the lighting first?
Right.
And then what it does to a production to have come from that lighting first perspective?
So it's not necessarily lighting first. It is all things at the same time.
Okay.
Because it's not like
so
I'm
your
like,
idea,
screw you
well,
guys,
I don't know.
I'm going to put a giant light
you
bulb
never
in
know.
the middle of the stage.
Sometimes people are like, I've never had the power. I want to lord over the others the way I never got
I certainly did that. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I didn't just put a giant light bulb in the middle of our interview.
But like in general, so your ideal process is not to say that like, oh, the lighting is so important it has to come first, but it just needs to be integrated into the whole in a more cohesive way.
There's a feeling that scenery is physical and lighting is somehow ephemeral, but there is nothing more physical than light. Light defines shape and form, and if you build something without an eye to how it will be lit, then it will not necessarily be lit the way that you intend or deliver that kind of thing, which is why I love being a lighting / scenic / projections designer, because you need to have things to light, and you need to know how
it doesn't do any good for you to be trying to light a scene and then not knowing what's in the scene. You need to have objects in the scene and where are the actors standing.
Or even if there's a feeling from the scenic designer that they want to create, this kind of like big, narrow, claustrophobic environment, but they don't allow for the big slash of light that's going to really reinforce that, and the way that they've built their scenery requires that the lighting be more broad, then they're really like,
they've
cutting
kind of
themselves off at the ankles.
They put themselves in a corner and then they can't get out without making major changes that are going to be
they scenic painted themselves into a corner.
So,
a thing I've literally seen.
so let's say, on a project you did yourself where you could avoid some of these pitfalls, what does that look like?
So let's talk about maybe Origami Night, which is an upcoming performance that I'm currently developing with a choreographer named Graham Cole, based out of Portland, Oregon. And this is a piece that is totally self-produced and incorporates the poetry of my mother, Pamela Annis, who has been a poet in Boston for like 40 or 45 years. And a lot of her work was kind of, as a teacher at UMass Boston and as a poet and just kind of and a textbook writer, was about formalizing the pedagogy of working class literature in the United States, of like, how do you teach working class poets, which is not a thing 40 years ago that people were really studying. And so UMass Boston is a working class school, and it is very much geared towards people who do not even have a dream of being able to afford to go to these like fancy schools, and are interested in what they can do to better themselves and continuing education. Some of them come right out of college. A lot of them are like 60 years old when they go to this school. And one of the things that Mom was teaching how to do, while also writing this poetry, this kind of work, but also like discovering how to teach people about it and about the greats in the United States who were writing this. It's basically that I've completely lost my train of thought and I have no idea how I'm going to finish this sentence. So Origami Night is an incorporation of, I've basically taken 20 or so of her poems that kind of form sort of both a biographical bent and an arrangement that is much more surreal and kind of gone from, we're basically going in reverse chronological order of her life, from kind of divided it into this sort of, we were talking about witches, into this sort of Wiccan concept of crone, mother, maiden.
Okay.
And I've added child onto that. Mom described to me a while ago a friend of hers, because she also, we seem to, there just seem to be a lot of witches around us wherever we go. And not just being in proximate to Salem, Massachusetts, but for other reasons. A friend of hers who had an official crone ceremony, and that not being a negative thing, of not thinking like, I am a crone now, of it being a celebration, of I am transitioning from being a mother or being a maiden, not that every woman has to have a child, for goodness sake, but don't at me, internet. But transitioning from that to, this is the last stage of my life, the stage where I have the wisdom of my life, where I give back, where I blah, blah, blah. And so,
like a hooded cloak.
Exactly, right. And knives in the darkness and the full moon,
Yeah.
exactly. I presume that it's more than that, but someday they'll invite me.
Yeah.
And I say that, but I've literally been to many of these ceremonies. And the moon is usually full. I don't know how they do that. I think with planets.
They time it.
Yeah. But basically that we've divided into this kind of biographical structure in reverse chronological order until we get to child, and then we transition into this very surreal stuff. And so now we have a concept altogether. And ignore the fact that I am filling in many of the roles that the other designers would at this point. It's all functioning basically the same. Me and my choreographer Graham, and my author, my mother, because this is a low budget self-produced project, are Garnet. They are Garnet ultimately in the end. Hi babe. Are basically all coming together from the very beginning to say, this is the concept, this is what we need, now how do we accomplish that? So then we all break out into all of our individual design elements. And Graham is trying to figure out what kind of movement style would best exemplify this sort of work. And I am trying to figure out how do we basically create a sense of vast context and a very small, intimate world that the audience is all experiencing inside of that. And so the main way I thought to do that from a scenographic perspective is to find like a large warehouse space, and then try to, like specifically a kind of post-industrial kind of space.
Doggy.
Our dog has discovered that the postmen are here.
It's the postman.
A very brief digression from the brief digressions of the digression. Here in Jersey City and in New York City in general, the post guy has a key to your house.
Oh, does he?
And they just, men or women, they've all got keys. And they
just have like 1,000 keys on a chain?
No, they've got a master key that goes to a lockbox that they sell that you need to insert into your door frame.
Oh.
And inside of that lockbox is a key to your front door.
Oh, that's funny.
And then they will open your front door, walk into your house, and put the packages on the ground.
Huh.
So we're lucky that we have like a kind of mudroom that is like a decompression chamber.
Yeah. Otherwise, they just like walk in your house.
Exactly.
Wow.
Or otherwise the dog would eat them.
Yeah.
And honestly, when the dog sees strangers walking into the house, I can't blame her
for
being like, who the
they don't know about the lockbox system.
The dogs
I don't know about the lockbox system. They don't know. It's not their fault. But anyway, so you're getting back to the play, or the production. So all of these decisions from the chronological perspective, how do you tie them together with the lighting? Where is the lighting coming in?
Right. So we've talked about directionality a lot in my work and trying to figure that out. And what it seemed to me that we needed to do was have the lighting all coming from this world, from the kind of post-industrial environment that we set it in. And then there are also some logistical requirements because I want to be able to put this piece up anywhere. The way that I'm building it, it runs on batteries. All of the lights come from the stage.
So if you find an industrial space anywhere, you could put this on.
Right, and I don't need there to be a company switch in the back. I don't even need there to be local power. I can arrive with the batteries charged, and I can do the entire show there.
Nice.
Well, the speakers will need power, but whatever.
Yeah.
Details. And So we put in a space grant. That would be more of something that producers would do, that the general management or production management team would do. In this case, it was also Graham and I. Put in a space grant, found this place called Building 5 in Portland, which is this massive 60-foot tall, 100-foot square warehouse. And so that's the vastness, that's the cold world that the poetry is trying to kind of build intimacy out of. And then we have this stage, and the stage kind of takes reference from the surrealness of the poetry and a lot of the kind of descriptions of, it's like synecdoche and metonymy and these sort of concepts of parts representing the whole. Mom does that a lot. And so there's this sort of origami-esque kind of structure into which a lot of lighting is built inside of the set. And so the notion is that this kind of surrealist form that has grown out of the decaying remnants of our post-industrial society, blah, blah, I'm getting too art-wordy for you, but is the thing that is translating that vastness into that intimacy. And the lighting is an extension of that. But it's also quite eerie, because if you light everything from below, then it has that kind of like, first few minutes of Sweeney Todd look about it. And so it was a very interesting challenge that I set myself to be able to turn that eeriness into comfort, to make it feel like firelight, to make it feel like ocean waves.
Because that's the thing, is like, you don't want to wind up saying like, well, I have all these artistic thoughts, but then when people see that light from below, they think horror movie. Like, it doesn't matter what you were trying to do if you can't overcome, again, I guess the assembled interpretations of light that people have seen from their entire life.
No audience member wants to think that they're going to a show to learn something. But the process of going to a theater show is about being taught some kind of reality about the world, often subconsciously, and then learning. Basically, like, someone said to me recently that the first half of this show is about teaching the audience what the world is, and the second half of the show is about capitalizing on
what you've taught them,
and then kind of expanding outwards from there.
So that's really cool. So then when is the show going up?
So it's going up December 15th through the 22nd in Portland, Oregon.
Nice. So I don't know when this is airing, but hopefully if it's before that, go and check it out.
If anybody's interested.
And if it's after that, then we'll show some pictures.
You can drop a QR code on. You can go to grahamcole.com/tickets if you're interested. That's my choreographer and our lead producer on the project.
Very cool.
But yeah, that's an example of a show that, even though it is fewer overall designers, myself and Graham and our costume designer, Virginia Belton, my mother, who is the originating author, there's still a lot of collaboration that exists from the ground up. And it was definitely not a process of, here's the set, now how do we add lights to it? The lighting is baked into the set, and it is an essential part of the concept.
That's really
That
cool.
is also an essential part of where the entire thing is staged. This is not something that is meant to just be thrown into a black box. It's meant to be a found piece.
Exactly. And you showed me that you designed a lot of this stuff on your computer. Sure. Like, all the stuff to be whether by CNC machine or different production modes. You've got to actually physically make the stuff too.
It requires a lot of technical, kind of know how to put it all together. And because I am the bottleneck right now, my mental capacity is going to be the thing that like keeps the production going. I basically have decided that I'm going to CNC everything. I'm going to have as much of it pre-cut as possible, and that way me and the carpenter I've hired down there are just kind of building it from basically assembling Lego pieces opposed to building it all from scratch.
Well, best of luck with the production. Cheers.
Thank you, sir.
Before we head out, last thoughts on this tea. What do you think? Garnet.
It is, as you say, it has this lemony scent, it has this kind of earthy scent, and when I was told when drinking wine, and I didn't know what to say. It's missing something in the middle palate.
Oh yeah.
But in this case, maybe it has something that I don't know. So there you go.
It's good tea. I like it. I really enjoy this stuff. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate everybody. If you're listening on the podcast, thank you so much for listening. If you were watching on the video, thank you so much for watching on the video.
Thanks to my dog for guest starring in her own way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see how it's going to show up on the actual audio, but I'm sure she was all over the video.
Oh yeah.
If you guys are interested in doing tea yourselves, the teas that I've had on on this video, the tea sets, all this stuff is on my site. Our warehouse is actually in New Jersey.
Oh, yeah.
So if you buy it, it's coming from the United States. You don't need to wait for it to get shipped from Asia or anything like that. And it's a really great way to be able to, find some time to talk to your friends and enjoy yourself.
And if you want to purchase any of the light bulbs you've seen featured in this video, then you can just go online and find them, and don't bother me about it.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, are you selling the light bulbs?
No, I really don't want to know about it.
Okay.
Yeah. Do your own. Find your own story. I don't care.
And then last thing, real quickly,
Yes,
some lightning round questions,
Okay,
just in case we have some time extra at the end. Real quick.
Yes.
For people lighting their own home, what's the most important thing to think about?
You need to have soft light, and you need to have at least 3 individual sources of light in every single room. And they ought to be at about the level that you're sitting at.
Okay, cool. Fluorescent lighting, yes, no?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
No.
Any reason you would use fluorescent lighting?
If you want to create a kind of harsh environment that is reminiscent of a horror film, then that's absolutely what you should do. It's about spectrum, Jesse. It's always about spectrum.
It's about spectrum.
And there isn't a lot. If you look at a spectrograph of what a fluorescent tube does, it has a lot of green in it, it has a little bit the others, and there are these huge gaps. So if you look at a person and their skin tone in it, the worst thing you could possibly do is have fluorescent lights in your bathroom, because then you're staring at a ghoul.
No,
so yeah, don't do it. Don't do it.
Very cool. And then last thinking, if you want to get into lighting design, what should you do?
Lighting began as an apprenticeship industry. Now, as with the rest of the world, everything is specializing, and everyone's going to tell you have to go to school and spend a bunch of bucks. I went to a school, I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts in it, and it benefited me very well. But you don't have to do that. It is still an apprenticeship industry. Find a lighting designer in your hometown. Go to your local theater and ask them who the lighting designer was, and if they're local, send them an email. This is an industry where I get emails like once a week, once every 2 weeks from students asking me, can we get coffee? And I always do it. And you know why I did it? Because when I was a student, really famous lighting designers took time out of their day to have coffee with me.
That's great.
And I pay it forwards, and I hope that when the students I'm talking to now are old and decrepit like I am, they pay it forwards too.
There we go.
So yeah, I mean, there's a community.
Very, very cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate it.
Cheers, buddy.
Have a good one. Thank you, Garnet.
Thank you, Garnet.
Have a good one, guys. Thank you so much. I'm Jesse.
I'm Chris.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.